Hello, I'm Pastor Horace Douty in Lexington, Virginia, and each Thursday I bring you a video of a local story from history, our history here in Virginia. I encourage you to share these lessons with your family and friends. What I am doing is quoting from one of my own volumes of history that I have written. The book is called History Lessons from a Country Church, available downtown books here in Lexington, or Amazon, or the Bookery, also in downtown Lexington. I hope that you will share these lessons with your family and your friends. Today, the title of the lesson is, We Shall Have a New Church. It was time for Oxford Church to take a deep breath. The horror of the Civil War had finally ended but was not forgotten. 6 years earlier, every person had been forced to make a decision. Am I for the Union or am I for the Confederacy? There was no middle ground. Families split over the issue. Tempers flared. Barns were burned in the dead of night because the owner chose a side. Oxford Church buried some of her finest young men fallen in battle. The year was 1866. The piercing pain of war still throbbed. Poverty and uncertainty bewildered all of Virginia. With morale devastated, the economy in ruins, and a Northern general overseeing this occupied territory, how on earth could the little rural congregation decide to build a new church? Even in good times, Presbyterians have trouble deciding anything, especially if it involves spending money. But Oxford Church not only decided, that congregation did it. They built. The entire process was an extraordinary accomplishment, proving that nothing is impossible for people of faith. The handsome sanctuary that stands today is a tribute to their determination. Their purpose was threefold: to thank God for the end of the war, to honor the men who had fallen, and to provide a lasting temple for their children and children's children. The story brings tears to your eyes. Reverend John Andrew Scott shed his military chaplain's uniform and began to serve as Oxford part-time pastor. His full-time job was the Ann Smith Academy in Lexington for girls, where he was the principal. Captain Scott was the right man at the right time for Oxford's people. All of the returning veterans had great respect for the warrior preacher. They were eager, they were willing to serve the nation and to serve God under his leadership. And the sweet stone church building that had stood for a half century was carefully and lovingly dismantled. All the usable material was salvaged and saved. Bricks were fired on site from good clay found in the churchyard. Most of the stone went back into the new foundation, some of which lay on the footprint of the old church. Money proved to be extremely scarce during those austere times. The little congregation soon realized that self-sacrifice was absolutely required in order for the church to be completed. Women rode buggies to Lexington, selling their baskets of butter and eggs. And this time the money did not buy children's shoes. Instead, they donated it to a sacred cause. Men got together for collective butchering times and then peddled the meat from door to door in town, few pounds at a time. They added the hard-earned cash to the building fund. Construction was slow, discouraging, but the craftsmanship was uncompromising. The people gave more than they could spare because they were proud of what they were doing. They envisioned their church as a biblical light set upon the hill that would shine forth to the glory of God. We owe them something. They put us to shame. After 2 years of construction, it was time to set the roof in place. Nearby lay the pile of salvaged timbers from the old church, and the contractor started splicing the old lumber for roof supports. He put a number of them in place, contrary to the strong advice of Granville Camel, who considered them undependable. Camel was a seasoned builder. He was an elder of the church. He made the bricks. He knew about construction. His opinion should have been heeded, but it wasn't. One of the old timbers broke, severely injuring the contractor and 2 other workers. From that point on, the construction was resumed with no more second-hand lumber. The bad news for us is that in Oxford Church today, some of those old beams arch above your head. The good news is that they have proven sound for more than 150 years. I must insert another note with regard to Granville Camel. His son James, only a few years after the accident, was called to the ministry. James completed his college education and entered the theological seminary, fully intending to become a Presbyterian pastor. But while in seminary, he suddenly fell ill and died, forcing Oxford Church to deal with one more tragedy. Some years later, Granville himself needed medical treatment in Baltimore, and leaving Oxford Valley, the carriage was halted on top of Tiger Hill. The noble man had a premonition. For long moments, Granville Campbell gazed down at the Deer Valley and the church that he had helped build. He cherished the bright Sabbath mornings in his memory and the times he had gone there to meet his friends and to be close to his God. His soul drank in the glorious panorama of meadows and mountains, and slowly the carriage moved on. It was his final view, because Granville died in Baltimore. He and his wife Sarah now lie in the graveyard just outside the church front door. I feel that I know Granville, but I wish I could have met him. The new brick church was dedicated on August 8, 1869. After 3 painful years of construction, a Lexington newspaper printed this note, quote, "We congratulate the Oxford people upon the auspicious indications which attend the opening of this new house of worship. The church is very fine, substantial, brick, sufficiently commodious to accommodate a much larger congregation than usually assembles here. Here is a fine opening for a young preacher who wishes to be useful. The church is presently looking out for a pastor." Reverend John Scott moved on. A considerable debt continued to hang over the congregation, even after embarrassing appeals were published in the local newspaper. The church pleaded for financial help from Presbytery and almost got it, but the request finally was denied. Why? Ironically, the church bureaucracy viewed this fertile valley as a virtual Garden of Eden, a land flowing with milk and honey. The people had to buckle down. They rolled up their sleeves and they sacrificed more. And 9 years from the beginning of construction, the debt was fully eliminated. The moral of this story: nothing that we face today can compare with the challenges of 1866. Our forebears did what needed to be done. So can we, you and I.